afternoon. It's Chutzpah Time.
And I'm ready.
Yep.
You ready?
You know I am.
You're born ready. So this is part 3 out of 4
Yeah.
of All About the US.
Yeah.
And this is the pursuit. All right.
Okay. So today, talking about the pursuit, the most famous part of the United States Constitution is the part about our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So we want to focus on the pursuit of happiness on this episode, and to talk about how it's a different journey for each American. So we have 2 special guests today that are gonna join and kind of bring their own input to the subject. But first, I did want to ask you, Jasmine, what does the pursuit of happiness mean to you?
So I think really cool things. I mean, I've never actually thought of the pursuit of happiness just from my own culture and background. But since I've been to the US, it's been really cool to think about the quality of life and how I can elevate it by being pretty free person to pursue hobbies and pursue a career that I want to pursue or to become a business owner. So just the being able to do different things
opportunity
has been my way of the pursuit of happiness, basically.
When I hear the pursuit of happiness, it reminds me of a theory or formula in math that I learned in high school, where there's a function that describes a shape that is getting eternally closer to the X bar, but never reaches it. So it's for eternity just getting closer, but it never touches the X line. And it's forever. So it's forever almost getting there. And that's for some reason, when I hear the pursuit of happiness, that's what comes to mind.
Wow.
And I think
that's
it's
deep.
Yeah, I think it's because the pursuit is assuming that you are trying to reach something, but you are not there yet. And it's interesting because this description, the pursuit of happiness, is assuming that maybe you can only pursue happiness, but maybe you cannot get there. And it's interesting. It's an interesting thought, in my opinion. It's very fascinating how it is put that way, that it is like a goal, something you're always trying to get to, but maybe you never get there. I don't know.
And that reminds me of the idea of greed. Of it, you're constantly trying to get somewhere. And disregarding or forgetting what you have right now in the moment, that's actually true happiness, is being in gratitude, being in acceptance of life, of what you have. That's you hear people say, I went to a village in Africa and all the kids, I met the happiest people I've ever met. And because every single thing they have is in great appreciation. So it's the pursuit of happiness is a very philosophical idea.
I agree.
And it is in a way goals and what we want. So it's really interesting.
I mean, I definitely feel like I've had goals in life that when I thought that when I achieve them, I will be happy. And that didn't happen. And And it's very interesting because sometimes you think something's going to make you happy and then you get it and it doesn't. Whether it's a certain, item like a certain car or a piece of art or, I don't know, anything you can buy, I guess. A lot of people think of, things that they want to buy or have that will make them happy.
Let me tell you, buying a ticket to a whole other country and changing everything in your environment might make you think that you're gonna start this new life and all your problems will be solved and everything will be beautiful and you'll be happy.
Wow.
And then you're like 6 months in and you're like, oh, right, it's still me.
Yeah. Your problems follow you wherever you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I get it, for sure. I think all of us have sometimes high expectations for certain things, whether it's an experience or a thing. You know how we were talking about this the other day. I, worked in a lot of in restaurants for a long time, and I would so easily recognize when I have a party and everybody's like has like this expectation that it was gonna be amazing and they're so like hyped up and excited to the point they're like stressed.
Yeah.
And they're so stressed to have fun that they don't have fun.
Right.
So I feel like definitely having expectations to a point where you're ruining your own experience is a thing that we all have.
You're in your own way of happiness.
Right. Because you're so riled up in how amazing it's going to be.
Yeah.
That you're like not being able to experience how amazing it is.
Yeah, that's how all the Hollywood movies about family vacations going haywire.
Yeah.
That I think like it plays exactly on that narrative of expectation.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
But I feel like also maybe the reason it's the pursuit of happiness and not happiness is because sometimes, let's say you do, like we were talking about goals, maybe you do achieve a goal and it does make you happy, but happiness doesn't last forever. It's not a state you can be in all the time. Same way you can't be mad all the time, or you can't be sad. I mean, unless you have some kind of medical problem or depression.
Right.
No. Or you need to go to anger management. But let's say like a balanced life is balanced. A healthy life is balanced. It's not a constant one thing that you're in one state all the time.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there are people who, people that are always happy.
Yeah.
And then you're like, they're in their bubble.
Right.
That's kind of like an unhealthy balance of this is reality.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, some people are just happy people.
We need those people in our world.
I feel like we're pretty happy. I mean, we're kind of goofy, I would say. But yeah, we definitely need more happy people in the world.
In the world.
Yeah. We're all pursuing. We're all pursuing happiness.
I hope so. No, but you have a good point. Like, the state of happiness, it's unrealistic to strive to be in a state of constant happiness.
Right.
I get that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think in the Constitution, the big picture is being able to do what makes you happy. And the way it played out, I mean, most of us are at work all day.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing something that you really like and makes you happy, are you gonna be a happy person?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes, this time quarantine has really showed some people the truth about going to work.
Yeah.
And going back to what they were doing.
Yeah. Everybody's reevaluating their life.
Exactly.
And companies are reevaluating their structure. People are reevaluating their jobs, where they live. We know that a lot of people are leaving New York because they're like, if I'm working from home, I don't need to be in the city. I can be out in the suburbs, have a way bigger house, have way more space, have a yard, have a car, all the conveniences of the suburbs, and still work in my city job, but remotely.
Right.
So I think actually a lot of people are thinking about, what can give them more happiness in their lives in this quarantine time.
Mm-hmm.
Because it kind of forces you to reevaluate.
It's such a unique time in history, especially in modern society where we work all the time.
Yeah.
But now, like you said, we're just forced to stop, pause, and rethink everything.
Yeah.
Or look in the mirror and really be like, yeah, that job is not good for me.
Right.
I don't enjoy it. And...
yeah.
Or like yourself, you now remember what you wanted to do before you moved to New York, you know?
Right, yeah. And then don't forget, we were talking a lot about jobs and career as an aspect of the pursuit of happiness. But there's also things that we can do, there's also like your mental happiness, like what can you do to be happy on your personal life or with yourself? Like you and I have talked about yoga on this podcast before.
Yeah.
As an outlet to, your emotional self, your mental self. So yeah, that's also an important aspect of our pursuit of happiness, not just the monetary, like you said, a little bit of association of greed or, the rat race, but another aspect, which is a personal aspect, maybe a spiritual, there is also the United States. One of the ideas was freedom of, to practice your faith.
Yeah.
So being free to be of any faith you choose and connect with is also part of the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, it's just that it seems like we lost track of our spirituality in that idea of freedom and being free of anything constructed, like organization, right? Like,
yeah, so you feel like
structure.
Yeah,
that's the word I was looking for. The idea that you're free of structure is free of any structure, but therefore in the dark.
Oh,
like,
so you feel like the pursuit of happiness is unstructured. It's like an idea of like to go blindly after something.
Right.
But the something is happiness. Don't you feel like everybody wants to be happy and we're all trying to find what it is that makes us happy? Is that...
And that's what you were saying. Like, I think that if I buy something, it would make me happy. And that kind of... that continuous, not trial and error, but like expectation and disappointment and expectation and disappointment. You're in sort of a loop of what's gonna make me happy.
Yeah. And I see what you're saying. You're saying it becomes from this idea that is pretty positive, and it becomes almost unhealthy.
Right.
Because people are all the time chasing this idea of happiness.
Right.
Interesting. That's a very interesting point.
And I think spirituality is one of the most healthiest ways to be guided to happiness, because it doesn't depend on anything. That's something I learned in therapy. If you depend your happiness on someone or something other than yourself, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah, that's true. That's really true. Do you see yoga as like a spiritual thing, or are you talking about like, going to church or going to synagogue? Like when you say spirituality, what do you mean?
If something that you feel like from the inside, you have a calling to do it. Like there isn't a day in my life that I don't think about yoga. Whether I do it or not, I am thinking of doing it. I'm almost like imagining I'm doing it, and it's giving me that as if I did it.
Yeah.
Which is not good, because nothing is like actually doing it. But meditating or sometimes going to a synagogue or going to church.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
It depends on the individual or the time.
Yeah, it's something that allows you to express a part of yourself that you don't in the everyday routine.
Right, yeah.
So when we do our Shabbat dinner, that's pretty spiritual. Like we come together, we eat food that we made.
Yeah.
And we do our prayer.
Yeah.
And it's the most basic thing that humans can do together.
So you're saying you feel people are looking for their happiness like outside. They're looking into career, shopping, certain goals that are more materialistic, like, oh, if I live in the Upper East Side or things like that. When you're saying maybe we should look into more simple things like connecting with your family, connecting with yourself through your faith, through meditation, through even physical activity, just, taking that time to really take care of your body and soul, I guess, like they used to say in ancient Greek, a healthy soul and a healthy body.
Yeah. Like when we go to the park, you feel a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah.
You feel a spirit.
Yeah.
Something within you awakens.
Right.
And it's a very special thing.
Yeah.
And there are certain elements in the park that awaken that.
Yeah.
And it's hard to explain, but that's how you feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
it does make me happy.
Yeah.
It does.
You feel good and you're like, okay, I got this life. I got this. I got this.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely recenters me and kind of like brings me back to like, oh, yes, now I remember what I like to do. I remember where I want to go in my life and the happiness that I want to pursue maybe. Yeah, this is very cool. I loved where our conversation went on this.
Me too.
And I really liked your point.
Thank you, Jacqui.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we're going on a break, and then we'll have our lovely guest. So stay tuned. Don't go far.
The break is very long. So
yeah, it's like 30 seconds.
We'll be right back.
Okay, bye. See you soon. Hi, welcome back to Chutzpah Time.
Hi.
And we have a great guest, Jasmin.
Yeah, join us today, my very bright friend, Erica B.
Hi.
Hi, ladies.
How are you, Erica?
I'm good. I'm doing so well today.
Yay.
I appreciate you having me on.
Of course.
We're so excited. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona. I went to the University of Arizona for college. I have my mom, who's wonderful. She was an educator, and she spent so much time teaching me a lot about life and the world. And I have just a wonderful group of friends. I grew up playing a lot of basketball, which is one of my favorite things to do in the entire world. I also grew up and was raised in a Jewish household. And so Judaism is a big part of who I am.
Nice.
What else should I add into that? trying to think.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a good start for who
Yeah.
I am.
That's
off the
beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we're kind of talking about the pursuit of happiness and what does that mean. So what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so I think happiness is just constantly, for me at least, watching a lot of sports. Basketball, like I said, is just a huge part of who I am, and it taught me a lot of life lessons.
Nice.
I wish I could have played longer, but a lot of knee injuries kind of took me out of the game.
Wow.
Yeah, and I watch a ton of Golden Girls. I think I'm just an old soul at heart. Ask any of my friends, and they will tell you I'm in bed at like 8:30. So that show just made my life.
I've never watched it. I really want to, though.
I highly encourage you. If you have Hulu, I think all the seasons are on there.
Yeah, I think I do. Okay.
We'll have to do it together.
Mm-hmm.
Please do, and then let me know when you watch them, and maybe we can reconvene. I just want to hear your thoughts on them.
Okay.
For sure. Definitely.
And activism is actually a really big part of who I am, and what the pursuit of happiness means to me, because understanding people's stories and where they came from is just how I restructure myself and reconnect with who I want to be on a daily basis. So I love to just meet random people and just start talking to them.
Yeah.
Wherever that may be, and hear their stories. So I think that is part of my pursuit of happiness, is just hearing the past so that I can be in the present and take that to better the future.
Wow, that's so cool. What type of activism do you do, if I may ask?
Yeah, so a lot of it now is based on the racial injustice climate that we're in right now. So I am just trying to connect with the Tucson community as much as possible, and attend protests. I myself am a Black female, and very, very proud of that.
Yeah.
And when I was in high school, I started my own nonprofit. And
So cool.
It was, I was really motivated and passionate just hearing a lot of the stories from Holocaust survivors. And part of being Jewish, my identity was always to make never again, which is a very powerful statement. For those that don't know, it's about ensuring that you never stand on the sidelines when you see something that's wrong.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, you speak up and you stand up. And so my nonprofit was to help refugees coming over from Darfur speak their truth. And so I would try to get in touch with middle school students and have them volunteer in their local community. So we would do volunteer events. One of them was like, we went to a soup kitchen and I just had them bag lunches and fundraise. And I would bring refugees with me, and they would connect with these middle school students and tell them their stories.
Wow.
And it was just such a highlight for me to really make that connection. And I did that for quite some time, and I think it was about a year, just me on my own for a little bit, and then I was able to get some other people to support me. But man, it's so fulfilling to help connect and really enlighten other people, and hopefully share that story with others. So
Yeah, it's really interesting what you said about fulfillment and, being happy through, feeling fulfilled maybe versus being happy is more rewarding in a way. Because we were talking about happiness is a very it's a very, it's a moment that you feel happy, and it doesn't last long. Usually, you get something, you achieve something, and then you kind of want something else. You want, again, to feel that feeling. It doesn't stick with you as much, maybe as being fulfilled. So I really liked that, the way you said that. Maybe that's the pursuit that we really should be focusing on.
And speaking of which, the fulfillment, mostly comes from what we do for a living. So being a little bit more personal, like for you, have you had like to change what you do for a living, or going from school to the career life? How has that been for you in your own journey and story?
That's a great question. And it's a hard question to answer at the same time, because I would say for the last 2 or 3 years, I really haven't known what I've wanted to do. And I've had this almost internal battle of like, do I feel like I am doing enough with my daily job? Do I feel like I'm happy? I'm showing up. Yeah. I'm doing my job. But every now and again, there's this idea of, I think I've mentioned it before, of code switching, where in a literal sense, code switching just means you can speak multiple languages, essentially. So, depending on your environment, you might speak English, but if you go to 3 blocks over, you have to speak a different language. But for me, in my job, sometimes I have to put on a different face. I have to speak a little bit differently because of the color of my skin. Wow. And so it's some days it's harder than others, because I'll have a customer who looks at me and says, "Wow, you're so well spoken."
Wow.
And so then it's like, well, what do you mean? And I every day I'm like, am I happy with the work that I'm doing? Do I feel like I'm doing enough? And so that activism piece where you asked me what makes me happy, that is something in a piece that I look into every day of, is that a career path where I would be interested and be happy doing that. And I wouldn't have to almost go into like a phone booth like Clark Kent or Superman to change who I am to kind of fit the customers that I deal with on a daily basis, if that makes sense.
Crazy.
So it's a hard question to answer.
Yeah, of course.
Because some days I am happy, and some days I might get a customer who looks at me and says, "Oh, do you think who is Black?" and says, "Do you think I could work here?" And I'm like, "Absolutely, why not?"
Wow.
Why couldn't you work here? And so it changes every day.
Wow.
It changes for me.
That's amazing. And that comment that you mentioned, like, you're so well spoken, is like so deep in how toxic it is, because if you were speaking quote unquote like a Black person, like whoever says that comment would expect, then you would just like feed into his stereotype.
Right.
And when you don't, and you speak like quote unquote, I don't know what the other option is, like a non-Black person, which is, again, it pains me to even have to say that, but just for the conversation. So then you're like breaking his stereotype, and he gives you this comment thinking he's giving you a compliment or saying something positive, when in actuality he's reminding you of how the world sees you in a stereotypical way, because they see the color of your skin and they automatically assume certain things about you. And that is just so deep in that little comment, that maybe that customer, maybe they're not racist. You don't know, like, it's an instant. Maybe they do have, racist thoughts behind it. Maybe they don't. But it's what it does to you. It's the effect that it affects, what it does to you as a Black person. It's not about them. And I feel like people forget that in our society, and it's just like, I just like the way when you told that story, it like hit me like how that probably happens to you a lot, and to everybody that is black or brown or yellow. They are hit with these stereotypes,
or has an accent. I can't tell you how many times people have asked me if I'm from somewhere in Europe.
Right.
Any country in Europe, honestly. I've been asked the whole.
Yeah.
So, and I don't, my accent is not European at all. But I get it. Like, what if I was black, for example, and I had the same accent? Were they asking me if I'm from Africa? It's kind of like the same narrative of a little bit of ignorance, just to be honest.
It's a lot of ignorance.
Yeah.
And that's...
it sounds like, though, in your pursuit of happiness, it sounds like being in service is very important to you. Because you said having to be active in activism, and how can I, it's almost like you're asking yourself, how can I bring that to my work? Or yeah,
it's something that I want to do all the time, and I need to be better about it. I think the struggle for me has always been, at some point, my voice hasn't always been heard, and so you become a little bit quieter.
Yeah.
And at what point, when you've been silenced too much, your confidence, you become shaken. And so now I'm like, I've kind of built this confidence back up, and I'm like, man, I've realized this is what makes me so happy. Like, being here on your podcast, where you've given me this platform to speak out and hopefully shed some light on what we can do to find this happiness. And this is something that I would like to do and find that balance to bring to my job on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, I think that we sometimes we forget that every day is an opportunity to be the person we want to be, or fit into what you're doing now, what we want to be doing. And to be honest, like, you being where you are in Tucson, Arizona, and even in the Jewish community, you being black in the Jewish community, you're a representative. You are in service just by being yourself and showing up. Because you could be working from home, right? You could be behind the scenes. And you could not be, I mean, I'm sure it's been hard to be active in the Jewish community, so, but it sounds like you're active there. So I think I'm saying just you being you is in service, is a representation that we need in the world.
Yeah. We lead by example. We try to. And that is actually also part of the Jewish faith. I hate when we sound a little too Jewish or whatever. Not trying to stick it, but in the Jewish faith, we say that we are, we're supposed to set an example for the non-Jewish people, and to, bring the, our goodness will be, like inspiration for others. And it's, I don't know, I just have so many thoughts, like, we're talking about the pursuit of happiness, and we're talking about the United States and our every citizen's right to, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And, we all have things that are holding us back, that are, like stereotypes. All of us are women. We know how a lot of times there are things that we want to do, or things that we say, and we're being hit with a stereotype, with a restriction of, oh, you're a woman, you can't do that. And you're also black, so I'm sure it's just that much harder for you as a black woman. And I'm wondering if you see places where you have that restriction, or on the contrary, if you want to bring something and say, I see that I have more of opportunity in other ways because I am a black woman.
That's a great question.
It's loaded. I mean,
yeah, it's a great question, and I want to say right now, because I am a black woman, my voice is being noticed and being heard more than it was before. And so that is the opportunity, right? This is the moment to kind of raise it and share what we can do differently. And that's what I'm doing now. So I'm having these difficult conversations with people of, hey, when you said that, or that time that, you know, you might have made a joke, but it wasn't that funny to me. This is why. And this is how we can do better.
Wow.
Maybe don't say it that way, or don't use that term at all.
Right.
On the flip side of that, 2 months ago or a month ago, because I was the minority, I would say I wasn't saying a whole lot, and I take ownership of that. Like, that wasn't good. That is what created this normalized behavior, and led to this almost culture shock for a lot of people, of like, I feel attacked. And the black community isn't trying to attack you.
Right.
We're trying to alert you. We're trying to open your eyes to something that racism is still here.
Oh, yeah.
It never went away. You guys did a great episode on Juneteenth.
Thank you.
Juneteenth has been on the calendar for quite some time.
Yeah.
Raise your hand if you saw it and you knew what it meant.
Right.
You're not getting that many hands being raised.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you have something to say? Sorry.
No, I was gonna say, and it was fascinating to discover that it wasn't just white Americans, but even black Americans that did not know about this holiday.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, in our calendar. So there's a lot of pursuing that we still need to do here in the United States. But I'm very happy to see the conversation being ignited. I can tell you that coming from Israel, where people are very, very vocal and very open about sometimes painful subjects, and that include race, because there are, like, you know, Jews all around the world, and in Israel there's Jewish people from different origins, and sometimes there is racism among them. And I know that I'm sure that you've felt that within our community, which is sad. But on the other hand, in Israel, people are very vocal about things. And when we moved here, it was very hard for me to come across this like wall when I did want to talk to people, especially about the racial injustice in America, because I didn't grow up here. And I know, anybody that doesn't live in the States has heard of it. We do know that slavery existed. We do know about racism and profiling, but we don't know obviously how it is. You can't really understand until you live here. And personally, every time I try to create a conversation about it, whether it was with a black person or a non-black person, there's always there's this like, no, we don't really talk about it kind of approach. And for me, it was very hard because I come from a culture where we talk about everything, even to an extent where it's like a little too much. So I'm so glad to see this conversation being ignited. Unfortunately, it's not without its price. But it's at least these people are not like, it's not in vain in a way, if I could say that, or maybe I shouldn't say it, but at least something is happening, and they're being commemorated, and people's voices are being heard now more than in a long time, probably since maybe the civil rights movement. So I think I'm looking forward to having more conversations and seeing other people having this conversation, just learning more. Like you mentioned certain comments or certain jokes. Is there anything specific that you want to share that is common and you find people don't realize it's offensive or racist that you want to tell us about?
Yeah, I mean, so there's something called microaggressions, and some of the microaggressions that I would like to raise awareness about is the phrase "I don't see color," and it's something that even I've heard from relatives, even, and it's just they're trying to be positive about it, and they're saying, "Well, I don't see color, so I don't understand why it's so offensive to you." You have to see color. By not seeing color, that's part of the problem. The systematic racism that we see in this country, whether it's education, whether it's healthcare, whether it's somebody, a black individual seeking a loan but not getting it, possibly because of the color of their skin, it's because you don't see color. You have to see somebody for who they are. You have to see somebody when they are black. You have to see somebody when they are white. You can't just skip that over. You can't skip over that. It's non-negotiable. And then the other one that gets me is you're so articulate, which I mentioned before.
No, that's
just because somebody is educated, there's no double standard for that. Like, African Americans and blacks absolutely can be educated.
Of course, that's such a pretentious
comment. You cannot underestimate
comment.
them at any point in time. It's unacceptable.
Yeah.
Yes, I've had a great education background. I've gone to college. I did really well. I'm very proud of myself. But you can never tell me that I am articulate. That's an insult.
Of course it is. Nobody's saying that to white people.
Yeah.
Of course it's an insult.
It's very, very offensive.
I do want to touch on what you said when you said, I don't see color, and how is it wrong? Because I'm going to be really honest. I used to say that. And it came from a place of, for me, you're a human. We're equal. It came from equality of it. It doesn't matter, right? Like, we're even, we're equal. But the difference is that for generations, for years, it mattered, right? And only now that I've watched enough movies and talked to enough people to get an idea of what it was, right, and what it is today, that I can have that respect and say, I like you said, you have to see color, because if not, you're disregarding the problem. And I just want to say that, like, of course, that if you see people as equal, that's great, and keep doing that. But you have to give the respect and the honor for what people are going through, you know, and to recognize the pain and to recognize the trauma and to recognize the injustice to help change it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go a step further and say we have to take responsibility for racism. Even if we're not part of it, we have to take responsibility for it existing in order for us to start changing that and standing up. And if you hear a racist comment, you don't just kind of hush up, right? You stand up for that person and you say, that's unacceptable and you need to apologize. You know what I mean? It's about standing up for people that are going through something that is not fair and not equal. So yeah, thank you for saying that.
Yeah. I forgot. No, I do remember what I wanted to say. Also, someone pointed out to me, I don't remember who it was, that saying, like, I don't see color is offensive because it's like saying, it's like erasing people's identity.
Yeah.
And we should say, I see you and you're beautiful and I acknowledge you're different than me, but I still love you and I still accept you and I still see you as a human being. So like, not to, like, we don't need to be, it's not, there's nothing bad about being different. So therefore we do not have to not see colors, because we're all different and we're all beautiful. And yeah, so, and then I wanted to say to Jasmin that was very important what you said. We should be able to point out to someone, hey, that was not nice. And the person should then acknowledge, apologize, and we can move on and this way educate each other. Have you had experiences where you pointed something out in the workplace, or like how did that go? How does that go for you, Erica?
Yeah, I've pointed it out actually, even within my family.
Wow.
And it it's gone both ways. So I've had two ends of the stick. So with my family, with one person, it's gone really, really well. And I've explained why saying something like, I don't see color, or, I don't want to call this, I don't want to be too specific, but saying something like, if you were to say, well, I have a black friend, or, I don't see color and I don't understand it because I have, a black sibling, or, however you want to phrase it. I have a black so-and-so.
Right.
It still doesn't take you out of acknowledging somebody who is black. Like, you are still responsible for seeing color.
Right.
You are absolutely still responsible for acknowledging somebody for who they are. And I don't care if, even if we were taking black out of the equation, gay, straight, Muslim, Jewish, like, you need to see somebody for the whole, for who they are, so that I don't have to, again, march into the phone booth and, like Superman, like, change into, something else just to fit your agenda. Right?
Yeah, it's like if I would say, if I would say I don't hear accents, it's the same thing. And first of all, it's disregarding where that person, their origin in a way, because what if I speak Italian and then I have Italian accent, and part of my being is the Italian culture, right?
Yeah.
So like, I don't matter. That's how it makes you feel at the end of the day, like you don't matter. It doesn't make you feel like you're inclusive. It makes you feel like you don't matter. And it's hard to understand, and it's hard to explain that to a person who is genuinely, probably, because I'm imagining myself saying that, genuinely caring and wanting everyone to have an equal life, an equal opportunity to pursue happiness.
Yeah.
And when you say I don't see color, that takes that equality, even though it's not your intention, away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the whole point, right?
Yeah. I did want to ask you kind of like a final question.
Sure.
Has the pursuit of happiness changed throughout your life?
Yeah, absolutely. It's always evolved, I think, because another thing about me is I'm adopted. So as I've grown up, I think it was probably around when I was like 12 or 13. One of my pursuits of happiness is trying to figure out who I was now. It's like, what was with my, my birth family a little bit. And so that was for probably about 5 or 6 years. I just wanted to know a little bit more about that. And so that became a real pursuit. And I think I really got closure around understanding, that dynamic of like, did they just not want me?
Yeah.
What would that life have looked like? I'm in an all-white family right now. Would my situation have been a little bit different? But I am so grateful for the situation in my life right now, and I would not have changed that for anything in the world. So that, that was another chapter in my pursuit of happiness. And then, finishing college, like that was another where I didn't even know if I wanted to go to school. And that was another chapter in my pursuit of happiness. And, right now, this pursuit of happiness where I'm passionate about fighting for my equality as a Black female Jew. Like, that is every day. That is nonstop. And the one thing that I would say is part of how I'm doing that, and if I could give advice to anybody who's trying to find that right now, is find a mentor. Because and find somebody who's removed from maybe your family or your group of friends, because I found somebody, and I wish I could share her with everybody and just have everybody listen to her speak at least once. She's just so incredible, and she's one of those people in life that I think truly practices what she preaches, and it goes beyond just her speaking. It's her actions. She is at protests. She sees something that is wrong, she will stand up beside you. She won't speak for you. She will speak alongside you. And it doesn't have to be like a racially charged injustice. It can be anything. And she really helped me get my voice back, and find the confidence to speak up again and use my influence in the circles that I know I have influence over. She's somebody that my friends, like you two ladies, and my family and everybody, my future children, will know about. When you do find your mentor, just make sure you ask yourself 3 questions. Do you feel like they push you to be a better version of yourself? Do you feel you are in a safe space when you are confiding something in them? And then the last question that I would ask you is, are you in a more positive mindset after you finish talking to them? Because it is mentally straining sometimes when you are in this pursuit of happiness, whatever your pursuit may be. It's hard. And if you answer yes to all 3 of those questions after you find your mentor, your peer, whatever you would like to call them, you will realize you are not in this battle alone anymore. And that is the biggest blessing in my mind, at least, that I have this person in my life who can help me go through that. And so everybody's pursuit is going to be a little different, but I think at the end of the day, like, having somebody alongside you who's willing to go through it with you is going to be the biggest thing, biggest difference.
Thank you, Erica.
Well, we would love to have her on our podcast if she's open to it, and talk to her and share her with our listeners. I just want to say also, I love what you brought to the conversation and the way you paid so much respect to activism. And I feel like some people think negatively when they hear activism, and you've just set it right back in its place, in my opinion. So thank you for that, because it's inspiring me also to be more active. And how, what you said, it made me realize our actions and our choices are, we can lead ourselves to happiness. Like we can't look at external things to make us happy, and we must also make sure that everybody has the same opportunities as us to be happy. So, and that's very current and very connected to your activism and your journey, and just the things that you have to deal with as a fellow human being that I don't have to deal with, and I don't want to live in a society like that, so you've definitely inspired me so much, and thank you for everything you've shared. And it was very eye-opening for me and brought a lot of very important stuff to this episode. So I just want to really thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on today. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Erica. And I can let you know right now that you are doing the most. And I think you have a book in you. You have several books in you, actually.
Wow.
But thank you. And the highlight for me was you brought the pursuit of happiness cannot be done alone. We have to do it together. We have to have mentors, and we have to have a community. We can't do it alone. That's so beautiful, and I truly resonate with that. I have my mentor beside me always, and I'm happy you have one too. So,
is there anything we forgot that we didn't mention or that you wanted to add?
No, I'm so grateful that you guys are giving people a voice as well. That is
the least we can do. Yeah, it's really the least we can do. Honestly. Wow, that was such a powerful conversation, and Erica is such a powerful person. I really learned a lot and felt like we connected and were able to say something that's really important that maybe we don't talk about enough. So thank you, Erica, for being on our podcast and sharing everything you did with our listeners and with us. And we actually have a very exciting new section in our podcast. This one is going to be very cool because it has to do with very recent events with a ruling of the Supreme Court. So let's bring in our next guest.
and now, coming from Chicago, our legal advisor, T. Smith.
Yay, that means it's tea time!
Tea time!
Yay, it is tea time.
Tea time.
Let's get into our topic today, which is the ruling of the Supreme Court to protect the gay and trans people with the Civil Rights Act. So T, as our legal advisor, please tell us, what does that mean and how does it affect us, or gay and trans people?
Yeah, well, so let's do a history lesson real quick. So the 1964 Civil Rights Act was the act that was passed during the Civil Rights Movement, which essentially granted equal protection and terminated segregation in the schools and allowed for voting registration, and that the states couldn't discriminate based on sexual orientation, based on race, race, sex, sexual orientation, creed, or color. And so that law in that time, certain language that was used is essentially the crux of what the Supreme Court has used for this particular ruling, which passed this past June, which allows now that private employers and federal employers can no longer discriminate against gays and transgenders based off of sexual orientation. Essentially, the Supreme Court justice took a literal reading of the law, and they used the term sexual based off of sex to include sexual orientations, and that's what allowed the transgender and the gay category to really come in under the protection of the law. And an interesting fact about this particular ruling is that they did not reference any of the law that was established from 2015 when they passed the Gay Marriage Act. Now, that's interesting because a lot of constitutionalists have different views on the actual legality, or should we say, if the Supreme Court had the authority in itself to actually make a ruling on an issue such as expanding fundamental rights, the fundamental right to marriage, which allowed for gay and transgender marriage to come into play under the protection of 14th Amendment. But instead of going down that rabbit hole again, the justices just applied a strict reading of the law. And they're essentially saying that when the justices back in 1964 used the phrase sex, they intended for that word to have progressive expansions over the years, and that's exactly what happened. That's what they applied in this ruling. So
interesting. So basically, they didn't change anything about the existing amendment in the Constitution. They just said this already exists and it supports and covers under its umbrella, also not just male, female, but gay and trans people.
That's correct. That's correct. Use a literal meaning of the law.
Very interesting. So does that affect all citizen, or like how do you see that affecting our day-to-day lives, or is it just something that gay and trans people will benefit?
Well, I think whenever you have any type of expansion on civil rights, it benefits us. It benefits us all, because until it can benefit gay and trans and lesbians, until it can benefit blacks, until it can benefits immigrants, then it's not being beneficial to anyone.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the crux of the United States and our Constitution, is it was created to be inclusive, not exclusive.
Right. That's very interesting. We were talking about the pursuit of happiness, and pretty much that's one of our basic rights as Americans, is the pursuit of happiness. And I feel like this amendment, it's not an amendment, this ruling of the Supreme Court basically supports all citizens to pursue their happiness, because if you're scared of being discriminated against because of your sexual orientation, you can't really pursue your happiness freely.
Right.
Cool.
And that's the fundamental meaning behind the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause and the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. It's literal reading for due process is the state or the government shall not deprive an individual of life, liberty, or happiness, or this pursuit of happiness, essentially. So it's literally in the text. Right.
This is it's pretty interesting that still in 2020 we're having to address and protect everybody's rights and pursuit of happiness and liberty in life, because we sometimes we forget there's still work to be done, and we're seeing a lot of very important issues surfacing with the Black Lives Matters movement and other things. So it's it's very current, and it's very important for us to remember that people are still being discriminated against, even though we may think it's modern and not, right? Jasmine, do you have any questions or anything to add?
I think it's funny because I didn't know that it wasn't already included in the ruling. And I think it's also funny that they didn't change anything, they just added to. So it's interesting, and it just comes to show that if they didn't have to change the whole ruling, they just expanded on it, does it really matter that much? You know what I mean? It matters they expanded on it, but it doesn't matter if someone is trans or gay. That's what I mean.
I completely agree with you. In this sense, we have to look at the historical nature of the Constitution. Now, this is a document that was first started being drafted before the existence of the country, essentially back before 1776. So over from that point and throughout the years, we've periodically added some amendments, and we've edited and expanded amendments, essentially to make the Constitution a living, breathing document, so it will never become obsolete. And when you have that type of approach to the Constitution, then like you mentioned, Jasmine, although nothing was fundamentally changed, it was expanded. It breathes new life into a document that pretty much holds this country together.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Interesting. Yes. T, do you have anything to say about the pursuit of happiness in the Constitution? Anything that you can enlighten us or relate to current events or just modern life?
Well, what I would say is I would make a suggestion. The Constitution is a very extensive read. With, I don't even know how many pages, probably several thousands, maybe even tens of thousands.
Whoa.
But I think it does citizens and scholars adjust to just have basic familiarity with the document. If it's just the Bill of Rights, if it's what does the First Amendment really mean? What does the Second Amendment mean? The Fifth Amendment, the 14th? Right. Just to kind of have at least a working understanding of the document. And that does several things, but one, it increases your understanding of what freedom really means for this country. There's a lot of questions that can be answered just by reading it and having a base understanding of this document. I think that's a great start.
Yeah, I agree. That I tried to read some of it, but like you said, it's like
it's super dense. So you don't have to necessarily go and find the old English. It's a lot of there are 2 4s and all, but there's plenty of digestible synopsis, or even the History Channel. I'm sure has some YouTube posts that can get you up to speed fairly quickly.
Yeah, for sure. That is so true. We should know our basic rights and what the government is supposed to provide us as the citizens.
That's inspiring. Thank you.
Is there anything else you wanted to add in regards to the ruling or the pursuit?
I think it's in regards to the ruling. I did read some of the dissenting opinions from some of the justices. Of course, the justices that did dissent are primarily conservative, and their arguments stem around, just how far are we going to allow the gay and lesbian community to exert its power against the country is kind of my interpretation of it. And they raised issues on, okay, so is it the next step that now we're going to decrease the rights of the church in situations now that we can't terminate certain individuals in employment situations. Are we now saying that the church has to accept gay pastors, even though it may be contradictory to the fundamental groundings of religions for that particular organization? And I think that legislation or litigation to come in the future will have a head-on collision with that, and we're going to see just where we draw the line. Of course, we all want the purpose of the Constitution and Equal Protection Clauses to be inclusive. But with being inclusive, we also have to be mindful of infringing on other rights or diminishing. And I don't think that's the intent of the LGBTQ community.
Right.
But I think that at some point, especially with the atmosphere that we currently have in Washington, that these types of matters are going to have to come up and going to have to be addressed.
Wow, that's kind of a scary discussion, I feel like, and I don't know. It's a tough one. I guess. We'll have to.
If the whole idea of coming to the U.S. and having a free country where you're free to believe in whatever you want to believe, then there you go. I mean, you know what I mean?
Right.
So then there isn't a limit to that. And so the question is, where are we drawing a limit? And for me, I would say, if you're not hurting anyone, why not be a gay pastor? You're helping others, right? Be in beliefs that you want systematically for people to believe in Christ, right? That's like considered healthy. So why wouldn't you want, right? So it still lies in the judgment of who you sleep with at night, which doesn't make any difference. Which brings us to the first conclusion of, okay, they didn't change the ruling, they just expanded on it.
Exactly.
But it's definitely an interesting conversation to have. And we will be confronted with it, like you said.
Yeah. These are important things, hard as they may be. We strive to equality, and obviously if a church has a fundamental problem with it, then it is an issue, like you said, because in now they can't discriminate against. So this will be interesting to follow up on. I'm sure that you'll keep us up to date.
So
absolutely. With all rulings from the Supreme Court, there's always caveats and exceptions to the rule.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that as time goes, these caveats will become more visible, and we'll have a greater understanding. But
yeah, that kind of took me by surprise. That one, I'm like, that's the process. That's how it goes. There's always somebody for it, and there's always somebody against it. That's the adversarial system of our justice system. Yeah. It's hard when it's close to home, and but it's like, I feel it's important, and thank you for bringing that up, even though it's maybe, like, for me, just personally hard to digest this dilemma, because I just don't see it as a dilemma, but some people will, and we need to prepare for that. So thank you so much for your contribution to our episode and to this subject, and just making it more like understandable to us and our listeners, like why this is important, what it is about, and what we can look forward to in the future. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. I look forward to the next time.
Yes.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you, T.
Thank you so much, T, our legal advisor, for your contribution to our podcast. T. Smith, Esquire, from the Smith Attorneys Group at Law PC, is here for you in all of your legal needs. Whether it's business, litigation, estate planning, ministry, entrepreneurship, and many, many more, don't hesitate to reach out. Go ahead and follow him at his Instagram, SAGLawPC. That is SAGLawPC. Go ahead to Instagram right now, open it, and type in those letters and follow him. Well, until next time. Thank you for listening. Please follow us on Instagram at Chutzpah_time. That's CHUTZPAH_time, where we post updates and reminders so you don't miss any of our episodes or shenanigans. We also are on Facebook and YouTube at Chutzpah Time Podcast, and on Twitter, Chutzpah Time. Thank you again, and goodbye.